Hi, I'm Kamran Agaev. In this video tutorial, I'm going to show practical examples for all flashback technologies that are available in Oracle. Here are the list of all flashback technologies that this video tutorial is going to talk about. Flashback query, flashback versions query, flashback transaction query, flashback transaction backout, flashback table, flashback drop, flashback database, and flashback data archive. So before starting the tutorial, I would like to enable supplemental logging to get complete information for the transactions. Okay, so let's start with the flashback query. Using flashback query, you can view the data as it was at a particular time in the past. As you know, when we run a DML command such as update or delete, the before image of the changed data is written to the undo segments. If this data is not overwritten, we can still get it from the database using flashback query. Let's see the following example. Let's create a user. Now let's create a table. Insert one row. And commit the transaction. And get the current time and a SCN value. Okay, now let's delete all data from the table. Commit the transaction and put the table again. Okay. Now let's query the before state of the deleted rows using the time and a SCN value we've got above. Now copy this value. Here it is. We got the row from the undo segment. Now let's query it using the SCN value. Here's the SCN value. We got it again. However, the table is empty. Next, the flashback versions query is coming, which is used to get the history of all changes made to the table for the specific time period. To describe the version of each row, semicolons can be used. Let's show it in an example. Let's create a table. Insert one row and commit the transaction. Now let's get current SCN value. Now let's make the first update. Change 1, equals 1, commit the transaction. Now let's make the second update. Commit the transaction. Now let's delete the first row. And commit the transaction again and get the current SCN value. Okay, now let's suppose that we don't have any information on what happened with that row. However, all changes are kept in undo segment. If it is not overwritten yet, we can get the versions of row between a specific time period. The first operation was an update command, and the row value was set to change 1. Here we can get the start time of the operation and time when row version was expired. As you see, the expired time is the same with the start time of the next row version. Then update command performed and row changed to change to. Here was second update command. Then delete command was executed. Here we use subsetted columns. You can get more information on these columns from the documentation. The most useful subsetted column is version6id, which is the unique identifier for the transaction. We'll use this value in the Flashback transaction backout feature. Next, Flashback transaction queries command. We can get more detailed information about each transaction using Flashback transaction query view. Let's use this query to get information about the transactions that were created in the previous scenario. Okay, here we can see that the row firstly was inserted, then updated twice, and it was deleted. And this SQL column contains the SQL code that will undo the corresponding change operation. Next feature is called transaction backout, which was introduced in 11G and used to back out dependent transactions. Let's demonstrate how it works. For this, we create a table. Transaction, insert the second row, another transaction, then we update the first row, update the second row, then update the first row again, and delete the first row. Let's create the table. Okay, to see what was happening with this table, let's query Flashback transaction query view. Okay, so we inserted 2 rows, we updated 3 rows, and we deleted the 1 row. Let's assume that we want to roll back the first update command. For this, we get its transaction ID and pass it to the transaction backout procedure. Here's the transaction ID. This procedure doesn't commit a transaction, so we need to do it manually. Now let's check user Flashback TXN state view to get the list of backed out transactions. Here it is. Version. Here it is. Next, Flashback Table is coming. Using Flashback Table, we can revert the table back to any SCN or timestamp. To show how it works, let's create a table. As the Flashback Table command can change the row ID of the table rows, we have to enable the row movement option for the specified table. Now let's get the current SCN value. Transaction counts. Make sure. Okay, now we use flashback table command to get the table back to the state as it was at specified SCN value. But getting the table back to the specific SCN value, let's perform a flashback query over the table to make sure. Here is SCN value. Okay, now let's take the table back. Let's query the table again. The data is back. Starting from Oracle 10G, dropped tables are stored in the recycled bin and can be restored in a second. When you drop a table, Oracle just renames it, makes some changes in the data dictionary views, and stores it in the recycled bin. Let me show how it works. Let's drop the table that we have used in the previous example and query DBA recycled bin view. Here it is. The table is here. So to get it back, let's query the recycled bin again. Next, Flashback Database is coming. Using Flashback Database, you can revert the whole database to past point in time in a very short time frame using Flashback logs. For this, you need to enable the Flashback option of the database. After enabling it, the background process called Recovery Write tab starts and copies changed logs from the database buffer cache to Flashback buffer and writes the change to the Flashback logs. Let's show how it works. First of all, make sure that the Flashback recovery area is defined. If it's not defined, set it, and make sure that archive log is enabled. It's enabled. And using Alpha Database Flashback on command, enable the Flashback Database. Now check the status of the Flashback Database. So it's enabled. Now let's create a table, drop it and get it back using Flashback Database option. Get the current SCN value. Okay. Now drop the table and don't let it be stored in the recycle bin. As it is not in the recycle bin, it will not be possible to restore it back using Flashback Table. So object is not in the recycle bin. Okay, now let's use Flashback Database to revert the database back to the specified SCN. Down the database. Start the database. Flashback Database. To SCN, specify the SCN value. Now let's open the database in read-only mode and check if everything is okay. Go to the table. Okay, it's here, it's back. Now shut down the database. Start up in the launch mode. And open the database. Open the database with use log option. And query the table again. Okay, it's back. Starting from Oracle 11G, it's possible to keep every transaction made to the table and keep it as long as you want. New background process, FPGA, Flashback Data Archive, tracks all changes made to the table and stores it in a file in a compressed and partitioned format. Let me show you how it works. Let's create a new user. Grant necessary privileges. Create a new table space. and create a flashback archive to retain historical data for 1 year. Okay, now let's create a table. And insert a row. Now we enable historical tracking for this table. Okay, from now the historical changes on the table will be written to the Flashback Data Archive. Let's test how it works. For this, we take the current time and empty the table. So the current table will be empty. If you use a flashback query over the table, we'd get the data. In order to prove that our query doesn't take the before image of changed data from under table space, we'll drop the current under table space and create a new one. Okay, now let's run the same query again. The row came from the Flashback Data Archive. Let's check the under table space. It's a new under table space. So by default, the historical data is stored compressed and internally partitioned. Okay, that's all. I'd suggest you to practice all flashback features that you have seen in this video tutorial by your own, and make sure you can use them in any critical situation. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next tutorials.